I wanted people to mistake my self-deprecation for complete tone deafness. Or it was supposed to feel like you were reading a 15-year-old's diary that her enemy secretly published without her consent. I guess artists are desperate, not me, to not be criticized, and they think this little scheme will help shield them from that inevitability. Sometimes they'll do it before the work is even reviewed, to try to get ahead of whatever they're most worried people might say. For example, if I were to say about my new book of essays that you're about to hear, just so you know, it intentionally reaches for newer and more claustrophobic heights of navel-gazing. That's basically the whole point. But I wouldn't do that. Kirkus Reviews had written that their main takeaway from No One Asked for This was that they were left feeling concerned for me. All I have to say is that if Kirkus Reviews was worried for me the last time around, they were going to be very, very concerned after this one. Writing a book is kind of like childbirth, not in the it's my baby kind of way, but because you have to forget how painful it all was to even consider doing it again, aka childbirth amnesia. The writing itself is its own special kind of torture that must be erased from your mind. And then there's the release, where all your months and years of labor are instantly devoured and destroyed by public opinion. I certainly don't remember any time during the release of my last book where I thought, that went really well, I loved feeling that exposed and look forward to doing it again. But alas, here we are. Even if you manage to forget the pain of that experience, writing a second book poses problems of its own. Its existence allows an audience to track the growth or maturation of the author, as a writer, a person, or both. In that way, I might be putting my own stuntedness on the record here. On the other hand, if I have evolved, the last book will then only become proof of how unevolved I once was. I'm hoping it's either a light ascension or at least a plateau. But it's kind of humiliating either way, especially if you are debilitatingly self-conscious and happen to write the kind of books I write. Books that are essentially the opposite of self-help books. If anything, they'll show you what not to do, how not to be. They might actually make you feel really good about yourself in comparison. So maybe they are self-help books. But truly, who wants to read about someone who is doing great? I mean, that would really make me want to kill myself, Kirkus Reviews. Putting any work out into the world is extremely vulnerable and personal, but when the content of the work is personal essays, it's really fucking personal. Analytical essays give the writer the cover of intellectual distance. Poetry is obscure. Fiction is its own convenient veil between the artist and her work. It's not me, fiction writers like to remind you, even if the character is the exact same age, looks the same, talks the same, lives in the same neighborhood, has the same name. Couldn't possibly be me. Between me and these essays, there is no distance, no veil. Even the parts that I made up, you have every right to assume really happened. And so, in offering this book to the public, I am offering up not only my work and abilities for scrutiny, but also myself, my choices, my humiliations, and my personality. Why I have decided to do this again can only be explained by childbirth amnesia. Still, I'm hoping that the reception of this book will hurt less than the last time around. I hope this not because I expect more charitable readers, but because I've been told, over and over again, that shame is one of the many loathsome qualities along with self-doubt, self-involvement, self-hatred, preoccupation with what others think, that dissipate by the time you enter your 30s. In fact, I've heard over and over again that your 30s are better than your 20s in almost every way. That life at 30 looks something like the stunning and talented Suki Waterhouse on the cover of British Vogue, where she stands absolutely glowing in a sparkling gown, clutching her and Robert Pattinson's newborn to her chest. In the article, the writer reported that, having passed that threshold of 30, Waterhouse no longer has the mental capacity to care about all that extra noise. Suffice to say, I couldn't wait. However, as I began my ascent, or descent, into my 30s, I personally was as insecure as I had always been, and so were most of my friends, even the ones who had gone on SSRIs and or started meditating. They may have thought they were wiser and more confident, but instead they were actually just less self-aware about how unwise and insecure they very much still were.